session, we invite you to do a quick poll just so we can find out what your needs are and how we can best support you. So I'd like to introduce our secretary, Leonore Hillstrom, and then I'll introduce and then we'll hear from Lucy, our other co-director. Okay.
Hi, my name is Leonore Dacunia Hillerstrom, and I have a son in the Somerville Public School system. His name's Oscar. He's in kindergarten, and I've been going to SEPAC meetings since before he started school, and it's been one of the many lifelines out there for us. And we are very proud that he's that he's in the inclusion pilot program at the West, which that's really been our hope since he started school, to be with his typical peers. And I just wanted to finish with a quote that a friend of mine has used before, which is from Wright's Law, and it says, advocacy, what can one person do? Start a special education advocacy group. One parent is a fruitcake, 2 parents, a fruitcake and a friend, 3 parents, troublemakers, 5 parents, let's have a meeting. So please join us in building our community and advocating for our children with special needs.
Thank you, Leonore. And there's definitely more than 5 of us here. So Lucy.
Hi, so I am Lucy Di Toledo. I have been living in Somerville since 2010. I have 2 kids that are currently attending Somerville Public Schools. One of them is in a transition program at the high school. The other one is a freshman. And both of them have IEPs. Both of them have had IEPs since they started preschool. So I do have, it's been quite a journey since, they were so little, and now, almost out of the public system, the public school system. So I have been attending meetings. I have been reading a lot about special ed, trying to advocate for my 2 children. They have different disabilities, different needs, and it's, like I said, it's been quite a journey. And now that the youngest is attending, is a freshman and is almost, I say almost, but he still have like 3 years still in high school. I feel like I do have a lot that I can pass to other parents that also have kids in special ed. I feel like I have, a lot of experience into, this incredible life as a parent of kids with special need. And that's why I decided to join the Somerville SEPAC, at least for the next couple of years, hoping that, I can contribute and help other families that must be going through a lot of what we have been going through, and still a lot of learn, but yeah, that's why I'm here.
Thank you so much, Lucy. So if you haven't, we just want you to appreciate that we're here for you. The SEPAC is the place to come and to answer all your questions. We've been there, we're here for you. And we have a really diverse board, and we have a lot of information to share, and we're happy to be here. So thank you, Mass Advocates, for helping us set up this Zoom, and I'll pass it over to you.
Great. Hi, I'm Joanne Pino, and I get to go first, so thank you for having us. Like I said, I'm Joanne Pino, and I have to say I'm really impressed that you're all joining us. I know how stressful this has been for everybody, and parents. You've been working really hard trying to make this work, and so hasn't the school and the teachers. They've all been trying to work really hard to make this as smooth as possible, whatever that might be in the situation that we're in. So I'm joined here. I want to let everybody know that I'm joined here by my colleagues, Julia Landau, Leslie Hughes, and Lilia Malishki. And I want to welcome them. And I think I messed up your last name, Lilia, sorry. And I want to thank them for joining us too. So the information.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. I also forgot to introduce Christine Trevisone. I'm sorry, Christine. She's the Director of Special Education.
Yeah, I saw her there, so I was going to give her a minute. I was going to give her a chance to say hi if you want. Or Christine, do you want to say hi, or are you all set?
I'm good. I said hello in the chat. Hello, everybody. Nice to see you all. And this is for you. So you go ahead. I'm here if you have any questions. All right. But it's good to see everybody.
Thanks, Christine.
A lot of old faces I haven't seen in a long time. Everybody else is kind of sick of me that's on here, that's in the schools. They see me every week.
Thanks for joining us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And so the information that we're bringing you tonight all comes from the Department of Education's, DESE, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education's question and answer that was just updated on the 15th of this month and posted to their website. So this information can be found on DESE's website as well as Mass Advocate's website as well. I'm going to tell you just briefly, very, very briefly about Mass Advocates for Children. We're a nonprofit organization. We've been in existence for 50 years, and we've been helping families for that long of children that have children with disabilities by providing a helpline that we talk to families and give them advice and some assistance. We do some legislative work that is so important to get some more services for children. And right now the legislation work has changed a little bit, and Julia can address that a little bit afterwards as well. And we also do advocacy in smaller doses when we need to and when finances allow us to do so. And tonight we're here because of a grant from a family in Somerville that has provided us a project we call the Somerville Special Education Advocacy Project, also known as SEEP. And what we're doing here through SEEP tonight is we are here to help support the PAC so that they can increase their participation in their organization. And also as part of the SEEP program, it also includes a project that's called Projecto Accesso that you can learn more about if you're interested on our website. I think that's all I want to say right now before I turn it over to Lilia so that she can give some logistics for the evening.
Hi, everyone. I put a message in the chat box, but we'll be stopping throughout the presentation for question and answer breaks. I'll be reading your questions from the chat box during those breaks. So any questions you have, please submit them there. And just please remember to keep yourselves muted during the presentation. I think that's it.
Thank you. Thank you. Julia, do you have anything to add before I go on to the slides?
No, sounds great.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to share the screen now. If I... Okay, can everybody see the screen? All right, awesome. Thank you so much. I just want to double check because when I checked this before people joined us, it wasn't working. So I want to make sure it is this time. And it's not, again, changing pages for some reason. Leslie, can you change it? Or Lilia, can either one of you change it?
Try closing out of it.
I'm going to stop the share again. Sorry about this. There's always some sort of technical difficulties, right? So I'm going to try sharing one more time. Or do you want to share it? What do you think's best?
Did you send me the slides?
No. Okay, I'll have to try sharing it. All right, let me. Oh, there we go. Okay, we're up and running. All right, perfect. So sorry about that. So believe it or not, we're in the 10th week of this COVID-19 whatever we want to call it, and really not week 100 like it feels like. There's been constant changes and constant confusion, but I think now things are settling down and things are trying to get back into, services for kids more directly. I know parents have worked really hard to make this happen, and so having the school and the teachers. And Desi had just made it very clear that the students with disabilities should be entitled to a free and appropriate education. But they also have made clear, and as we know, since we're home and are with the children, that it's going to look very different than it was when they were in school. And this is something that we all have to, work with and come to terms with, and to help figure out what's going to be best for the children along the way. And for now, until school opens again. We know that surfaces have been uneven, but we're hopefully now that things are getting and parents are able to access services for their children. And as I say this, I do realize that it might not be the case, because I did have a helpline call just the other day that there was a parent who their child got 2 times 60 a week for speech and language in their IEP. And since the school has been closed, they haven't gotten any speech and language for their child. So again, that's hopefully like one draft situation. But if you are in a situation like that, you should reach out to your PAC. You can reach out to MAC. There's people to reach out to that will be able to help you to be able to get the services that your child needs to be successful. We know that you know your child the best, and that right now it's more important than ever to advocate for services for your child. And it's more important than ever to work together with your team to be able to make this happen. I don't know your situations individually at home. Some parents are having a difficult time getting their children to even participate in the remote classrooms or remotely at all, when other kids are really thriving in that situation. So again, it's very individualized, just like it is when the children are in school. So right now, we want to know what resources might be available. I think I'm forgetting to change my slide, sorry. What resources are available. And there are virtual classrooms that are up and running right now, that some of them are pre-recorded lessons that teachers are doing, and some of them are live lessons that teachers are doing. And we know that some children might be having a little bit more difficulty accessing one or the other, or accessing the online virtual classrooms at all, because not everybody is connected through with having a computer or having the appropriate amount of services that people can use there might be 5 people in the room trying to get online, and they don't have enough power to be able to do so. So if that's the case, what can happen is that there'll be some packets that are available, actual paper packets that are available, that parents can either pick up at the school, or that the school could bring to the parent if they can't access the school. There's online courses that are available, and videos. And there's also options like WGBH and virtual tours that are offering some more enrichment programs, that once your child's done with the teacher, if they're able to access it, they might be able to access these other enrichment opportunities online as well. There's also instruction and services that the students can be getting through right now during this time, and that can include full class participation or small group participation, depending on what your child needs. They could also possibly be getting one-on-one services, similar to what they were getting when they were in school, but of course it would be over video or phone, whichever you can access. Because if you can't access the video option, there are phone options as well. So a lot of people might have Facebook on their phone, but they might not be able to access like the Zoom thing on their did I say on their Facebook? I meant on their phone. And so there's all different ways to do this. Students also can be accessing teletherapy at this time, if that's something that is written into their IEP and that they need. So they can get ABA through teletherapy, applied behavioral analysis, as well as speech and language, occupational therapy, and even physical therapy if that's what's called for in their IEP. There's also the possibility of receiving some counseling services if they're needed as well. So again, everybody's going to look a little bit different. Not everybody's, we're going to talk a little bit further about the remote learning plans, but not everyone's going to have the same remote learning plan. Everybody should be different and have some services that were in the IEP as well in this remote learning plan. So there should be some direct, regular, ongoing communications between school and family at this time. And again, I think it's going to depend on the need of the student, depending how often you have to be, you as a parent need to be in contact with the school. So if you have a child with high needs, you might be able to be in contact with the school more often than others. The schools offer some office hours, not just for the student, but also for parents as well. So, but if you're noticing new issues with your child, such as any type of behaviors that are out of the norm or any type of anxiety, then you should absolutely get in touch with your school right away and to be able to address those situations. Again, communication also should include the communication in whatever your language is at home. And it's really important to be able to get interpreting services as well as materials translated. And if you're not, or if you know people that are not getting that, then you should help them to contact the school as well, so that can be put into place. So we're going to stop here and take a minute and answer some of the questions that are coming up in the chat. And so we're going to turn it over to Lilia and Julia to answer any questions that people might have.
Sure. So we've had a couple questions come in. Reminder, if you have any questions, please just submit those in the chat box. So our first question is, does a service provider offering office hours count for receiving services? My son gets help with math and writing, and the teacher has only offered office hours. His other special educator has been meeting him 2 times a week for Wilson instruction. Let me know if you want me to repeat it.
No, I've got it, and I know we have a lot of people who can answer questions here, you know, the PAC leaders and Christine, so folks should jump in. I'm not exactly sure in the question what's meant. It depends what's in the IEP, and you know what, I'm not exactly sure how Somerville is constructing office hours. If you feel like your child's IEP requires a certain amount of time of direct instruction, and if you're able to get that what you need for your child through the office hours, and they may count. I guess I'm just not familiar enough about what is meant by office hours and how that may or may not be different than what the person's child needs. But the folks from Somerville may have a better sense of it.
Yeah,
Well, I can't speak. Oh, I'm sorry, Christine. I can't speak directly. I think, Brenda, I can't speak directly for your child, but you know, you can always give us a call if you have a question that we can answer, because it's hard to know for every single, you know, parent. Yeah. But we do have office hours as part of our consultation. Many of the special educators are teaming into the general education classrooms, and they're together for supporting. And then beyond that, they have the office hours so that if kids have questions or difficulty accessing or something like that, they can have that. We ask all staff to have office hours, not only for students, but also for families if they have questions or concerns or anything like that, that they always know that when a teacher or a service provider is available to speak to them. So
that helps.
Yeah, so my office hours are really directed for parents, and it is under consultation, like Christine said. So I use my office hours to connect with parents and answer any questions, and also just talk to them about how's it going with their child. And then in addition to that, for I do math, and I do small group instruction virtually for like math and writing and their IEP goals. Of course, that looks different, you know, than it would in the classroom, but it is different from office hours because that is under a different grid.
Right. Yeah, I was just concerned where one person was providing direct services, very much like it was when he was in school, and the other service provider was just offering us office hours and not making that more one-on-one connection. So I didn't know what the expectation was.
I guess it depends, and generally what I could say, and I assume Christine, you would agree with this, is if your child requires some kind of direct instruction in the IEP, and you feel like that's what's needed now, even with the schools being closed because of COVID, then that would certainly be an appropriate thing to reach out to the district about and to ask for that instruction to be implemented, which is different than the kind of support and connection with families through office hours from what you all are describing.
Right. I think we're doing okay. I'm also an educator, so I feel like I'm teaching him well enough, but I don't think I'm going to be meeting his goals,
Right.
But
I think if you have questions, Brenda, I mean, you can always reach out to me, but I think you should also reach out to the special educator and just ask them.
Awesome.
They,
Thank you.
they would know the best why they created it that way.
Perfect. Thank you for your insight.
All right, our next question is, does the Department of Ed have any plans for summer remedial services?
The Department of Education is been repeatedly telling, I'm sure Christine, you've been on these calls with the department, they've been telling special school districts they have to be prepared and preparing both to provide remote services as well as the possibility that the governor may be allowing schools to be open or partially open over the summer. So the direction is for school districts, which is very difficult for school districts to try to be preparing for both simultaneously. It has not yet been called about what's going to happen in terms of whether extended school year services are going to, if any of them will be able to be offered in person at this time. And I think many school districts are finding it very challenging to prepare for both simultaneously. I assume that's the same for Somerville as well, because arrangements have to be made with staff and teachers.
Right. Well, we're supposed to prepare for three things. We're supposed to prepare for remote. We're supposed to prepare for a combination of remote or direct, and we're supposed to prepare for just direct. We continue to ask, I mean, as you know, DESI's guidance, which has been great, but it kind of changes every week. You put one plan in place, you get everybody on board, you get ready to go, and then the next week it changes. I'm not sure what's going to happen with the summer service. As you said, it's very hard to hire. But by this point, we would have already hired all of our staff for summer school. And the longer it takes, if we hire people and then we go remote, then it's a whole another thing. So we're still waiting for guidance. We're hoping to have it by this Friday, what the plan is going to be. But we're planning throughout, and I think that we're planning as well as our general education counterpart on how we can engage students and support students, not only according to their IP for extended year services, but how to best support students to access the curriculum.
Okay, thank you. We have a couple more questions. Our next question is, does receiving packets from a speech therapist for the parent to work with the student count as speech therapy?
If your child has a need for small group or one-to-one speech therapy in their IEP from a speech therapist, then at least my view would be that that's not the same. That might be some way to provide support for the child, but it's not the same as providing teletherapy, consistent with what's in the IEP. Now we know, school districts what the state has been really clear about is that the expectation is obviously day one and March 17th, school districts, everybody was in shock with what's happening. School districts had to regroup and keep getting this additional guidance to know what's required. But the expectation is over time that more and more of the IEP services will be able to be provided remotely. So I assume you would agree with that, Christine, in terms of?
That is not services, and if that's happening and someone would let me know, we will address that immediately. I can tell you that I personally delivered iPads to any student who could not access through Chromebooks. I delivered over 38 myself to parents throughout the district. We delivered Chromebooks and a variety of Fire tablets so that families could access services. And I'm on weekly conversations with every special educator in the district. So I don't know of anyone that sent out packets, but it doesn't mean there's always someone that has. I'm going to pretend that's not a Somerville thing, but if it is, please let me know and we will make sure it happens immediately. Oh, not happening in Somerville. I didn't think so, Deb. Thank you. My blood pressure has gone down. Thank you.
Great, thank you. This is a good question. What sort of creative services is MAC seeing for high needs students who are not succeeding at online instruction?
That is a really good question. We've, had a bunch of different educators come in and do some chats with families and with others. I think what we're learning and what's very consistent with the guidance from the State Department of Education, the Commissioner of Education gave some guidance at the end of April that really says, again, this is all new, right? This has never been done before. Thank God we've never had a pandemic before, but that also means school districts, therapists, instant teachers are trying to figure out how to effectively provide remote instruction in a way that students, including students with more significant disabilities, can access the instruction. So what the commissioner has said clearly and repeatedly is that for students who can't, whether it's because of their disabilities or whether it's because of their language access barriers or their emotional response to the situation, what they're saying is that districts should be one by one reaching out to families and trying to identify individuals who have the best connection with parents and with the child to try to work one-on-one to try to understand what are the barriers. And then, like for students with more significant autism or students with more significant intellectual disabilities, it may not be like it is for so many other things. It may not be intuitive how to engage in what we're doing right now and how to start learning through some remote instruction and technology. So then there's going to need to be a process where the school works with the student directly to learn the skills and get the familiarity needed to participate through the remote instruction that can be offered. Or maybe there's a need to do analyze the behavioral issues, if those are what are in the way of what's might be making it difficult for the kid to engage, for a student to engage. So I think the bottom line is that the schools need to hear from you as parents about what is actually happening or not happening. We've heard from families where speech therapy or ABA or small group instruction is being offered, and it's really not possible to get the child, even with the support of a parent, to sit there and to engage. And then that's where it really requires some problem solving directly with the experts in your school who know your child and have probably had to help develop strategies for your child to engage when they are in the school site, but now it's all new. So again, other folks who are in the ground doing this may have some good suggestions as well.
I agree, Julia. I think that, with students with severe special ed, it can be difficult, but I will say that we've had some great successes and the teams have been great in working with the family. We've gotten 2 communication devices out for students who had previously just been beginning to use them, and the speech and language pathologists and the teams have them using those devices. I've had parents say, they told me they want McDonald's, or, so they're actually communicating and engaging where these parents hadn't been engaging before, but it was an ability. I say I'm on all the video cameras in Somerville because I'm always meeting someone in a parking lot with a computer or a device somewhere. But that they're really involved in that. We've had students with some severe behavior issues happening that the BCBAs have supported them. We have students who are working on eye gaze devices at home with their special education team. So I think there's a lot of great things happening. If there is something happening that people need support with, please let us know. We have a full team of people and we're ready to help in any way that we can.
Michelle, have you had that, and do you have any suggestions from your experience? Michelle's got 2 hats, right? You're wearing.
Yeah, I know it's a great question, and it's actually something that I just advocated for through the school committee of just, how important it is going to be to look at what's going to happen in September, because there are kids who just are not going to access. I don't work with as high needs population, but I'm struggling with just students who just have learning disabilities that are not showing up to any services. And I've reached out to parents, I've sent emails, I've sent letters, I've almost showed up at their house, so we're all just doing our best, and I'm still trying to figure out what is going to work. I mean, if I have to like wear, you know, gear and go to their like house, I don't know.
We do have staff members going to houses to stand outside 6 feet apart just to see the kids and get them engaged so that they remember that connection and that relationship. And they put it on the schedule. We brainstormed that they're going to do it at least once a month.
And of
I
course,
know
not everybody's going to be able to do that, but.
No, right. Just saying that those are some things that staff have been doing to go out of their way to try to engage students and families.
Yeah, and that is something that we've heard from a lot of service providers as well, is if there's a particular staff person or paraprofessional who the child does have a better connection with, to get that person engaged, at least to try to, you know, make a transfer to the other service providers who but again, that's why it's so important that this has never been done before. And so in order to develop the services that are going to work for your child, there's always so much on a parent's plate in terms of what's required to get the appropriate special ed services. And now families are the ones who are doing a lot of the teaching, right, as well. And you're the ones who are observing the child most of the time during the day. And the more teachers hear from you about what the barriers are, the more they can then use their expertise together with you to figure it out. If there's another, I think the longer this goes, I think the longer we're going to see what does work, and that we won't have to be inventing the wheel so much over and over again. That's the hope.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to turn it back to our presentation now. Leslie Hughes is going to take it from here. I know we have questions coming in, and we're hoping to have some time after the presentation to take more of your questions. So Leslie.
Thanks, Lilia. So I'm going to talk about remote learning plans. I'm going to try to go quickly because we do have a time limit. I think we advertised that we were going until 8:45, but we are staying until 9 if people can do that, if there are a lot more questions than going past 8:45. So remote learning plans, school districts should be providing them for students with disabilities. And the remote learning plan should have information about your child's instruction and services, including a schedule for regular ongoing communication with your child's teacher and or service providers. These ongoing communication can be by phone, email, video, conference, whatever works for families. There's also should be in the remote learning plan a list of the individual teachers, the service providers, and or any other educators who are working with your child or providing instruction or services. It also should have their contact information as well on the remote service plan. There should be a schedule and the length of time for providing the instructions and services remotely. So for example, it might say in a remote learning plan that the student will receive speech therapy from the school's speech pathologist Monday and Wednesday from 10:30 to 11 via Zoom video conference. So it's that's information should be in the remote learning plan. Also, it should include the type of assignments, type of projects, packets that you can expect to receive from your child's educators, and that includes any types of accommodations that should be in place. And another piece that's really important is that the plan should include how your child's educators, general educators, and special educators and related service providers should be collaborating in order to provide your child with a remote service plan that makes sense for them. And then they should also have the start date for for providing these services to your child. And it's important to remember too that remote learning plans are not IEPs. They're not IEP amendments. They're written plans that outline the details and the logistics while your child is learning from home. So there's quite a difference between the two, but these are the remote learning plans that should be out. So we have heard that, no, go back. Last slide. Yeah, thank you. We've heard that parents are starting to receive remote learning plans. students should be getting them by now, but if you haven't received the remote learning plan for your child, absolutely request one. We have a sample email on our website under our COVID-19 section of our website that has language how you can request the remote learning plan if you haven't have it yet. If you have received the remote learning plan and you don't believe it's adequate, it's really important that the district hears from you immediately, right away. You know, you've heard throughout this presentation from Joanne and from Julia and from others that communication is going to be absolutely key here. So look at your IEPs, your child's IEPs. Think about what are the priority needs, especially the ones that are not being met, and then work together to collaborate to develop creative solutions. This is very difficult for parents. I mean, everybody has been saying it. Parents can't meet their child's needs alone. There has to be a fair amount of collaboration between parents and teachers and others in special education. So some examples of situations where the remote learning plan might not be meeting a student's needs. We're hearing a lot of things from families. We've heard from families about not able to, we've already talked about this, not able to engage in remote learning. One of a good suggestion might be for a student would be to have consultation with the teacher to help strategize, figure out ways to start getting the child engaged in learning remotely. Sometimes we've heard a lot about behavioral regression and things like that. You could ask to have ongoing consultation with a BCBA or behaviorist to work with you as a parent to do some parent training or parent coaching, and also to work with your child directly. And then, you know, if speech, any of these services, if your child is regressing or just not accessing, talk to your speech therapist, talk to them about what your problems are. The teachers and the service providers know that this is really difficult, and as Julia said earlier, and as Michelle said, a lot of teachers are doing this themselves. So they know it's difficult, and it's important for them to know what your specific challenges are and other areas that your child is struggling, and it's important to ask for help. Another thing we want to talk about is meetings and timelines. Some of this, there's been more guidance around this. The team meetings should be happening now by video or by phone. I know in the beginning, like we said, things were kind of confused and we didn't really know what was going to happen, but now they should absolutely be happening. One thing to mention too is that parents do not have to agree to have a phone or a Zoom IEP meeting during these times, but it's always best to have a meeting if there are issues and problems. But if a parent chooses not to have a remote IEP meeting, then they can't be held accountable in any way for declining that option. I have one parent that I'm working with who has 3 kids at home, 2 with autism. She has Zoom meetings going constantly. Things are just really difficult and challenging for her right now, and she's elected not to have a remote team meeting for now. She just needs more time to kind of get used to all of this, and that's her prerogative. Also, all team members must be present at the IEP meetings unless the parent excuses the person who should be a team member. This hasn't changed. It's the same as it was before. So the IEP meetings should have all team meetings unless parent excuses. If the IEP ends when schools are, while the schools are closed, you know, if the time period ends when it's expired or ended, that IEP will be in place, will be in effect if there hasn't been a meeting to renew the IEP. Also, procedural timelines remain in place. So all of those timelines that a lot of us are familiar with or more than familiar with are still in place, like for IEP meetings, requests for evaluations, etc. But parents can agree to an extension to timelines, including annual IEP meetings. And districts and parents should collaborate with families as much as possible to reach consensus on the timeline extensions. everybody's schedule is all over the place right now. Things aren't the way they used to be. So there has to be that level of collaboration to figure out what's going to work best for everybody involved. Also, we've heard some things about some districts have asked parents to waive rights, and districts not require parents to waive their rights when agreeing to a timeline extension in order to have a virtual meeting. And any agreement on extensions of timelines should be documented. Most things absolutely should be documented. The next one is about evaluation. Joanne? Thank you. Okay. So there's been a lot of questions about evaluations too. Some evaluations can be done remotely, and that's great for the ones that can be done remotely. And for those, these assessments, parents can give consent by mail, by email, by phone, by text. So it's consent can definitely be given when we're talking about formal evaluations. But not all assessments can be done remotely, so there has to be a level of professional judgment for the evaluators, which parts of the evaluations can be done remotely and what parts have to wait until the evaluator and the student can meet face to face. Some of the parts of evaluations that can be done remotely are things like inventories, interest inventories, parent interviews, teacher inventories, things like that. And there's the research. There's not a lot of research around doing remote assessments, and that's sort of coming around now, when people have to start thinking about it and looking into it and figuring out what types of assessments can and cannot be done remotely. And then the last thing, early intervention, EI. So EI and school districts can do remote transition planning conferences, and they can use the existing evaluations and assessments from EI to develop a partial IEP, just a partial IEP for waiting for when full assessments can be done in person, or they can use the IFSP from early intervention and use that as a document to decide what types of services should be, and what the remote learning plan should look like. Julie already talked about extended year services, so I'm going to kind of skip this one. We know that there's going to be a decision, there's going to be guidance on this pretty soon, so hopefully we'll know more about that when that happens. So compensatory services, there are services that school districts may provide if some IEP services are missed. And this is going to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis when the students return to school. School districts have been encouraged by the DESE and the guidance to provide services now, as many services as possible now, to avoid having to provide a lot of compensatory services. And we're suggesting to parents to try to access as many services as you can get now. Parents need to be vocal, they need to be involved, they need to work collaboratively with school districts to advocate for their children. What else? So also it's important when you're getting services at home is to log the services that you're getting, log at the interventions that you're getting, or the material that you're getting, and also how your child is doing with it. Keeping track of all this information will be helpful later when you're talking to the school district about compensatory services. And keeping track is important because I don't know about you, but I can't remember anything, so I have to write it down. And with everything that's going on that's so different and changed, it's hard to remember just some of the basic things in life. You can keep a notebook. The Federation for Children with Special Needs has a form that you can download, and you can log the information that's necessary to log. And MAC is also working on an app, a phone app, to help parents easily by using their phone just keep track of what's happening and how their kids are doing.
Okay. Hi, it's Joanne again. And I'm going to be doing this slide. This is just like a wrap up of what was said. What can you do now? If you're having problems or if you have any questions, contact your school. Let them know what's going on. It's really, like Leslie said, important to keep notes on all this information. As Julia said, it's all so new. We don't know what's going to happen, but it's just so important to keep track and keep notes of things. Let them know what's not working for your child and try to work with them to figure out other options. Let them know what's working well for your child, because there could be some things that are working really well. So when they go back to school, they can continue to do that. You know, so there could be some positives coming out of this as well. Let them know what you're most concerned about. And, you know, like that other parent, they weren't getting any speech or language whatsoever. So that would be their first priority, is to get them those services. And so Leslie talked about the sample email that we have on our website. You can also use that same form to ask for more services. It can kind of guide you. You'd have to change it up a little bit, but to ask for more services if you feel that what they're getting right now in their plan is not working. And as Leslie said, keep track of what your child can access, what they can't access, and also keep track of what was offered to your child from the IEP and what wasn't offered for your child. Because as Leslie said, the more services you get now, the less any compensatory services or anything like that you would need further down the line. Hopefully, in the best case scenario, you won't need to get services, and but it will be decided case by case, as Leslie said. So just keep track of everything for your child, because you will be your child's best advocate at that point. So we're going to open it up for the last 10 minutes or so for question and answers. And so it's going to go back to Julia and Lilia again. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Okay, I'll get right into it. So this is from a parent. I have two boys, one in 3rd grade, the other in 5th grade, that are both on IEPs. My question is, each one of them would be pulled out of class twice a week, and now they're doing one Google meeting each a week. We asked for them to be seen twice a week, but they said it's not possible. How can we advocate?
I can tell you what comes to my mind, and Christine, Michelle may have other things to suggest, but it sounds, I'm not sure what's going on in the Google Classroom, if you're getting the kind of special ed instruction for your child once a week instead of twice a week, or if you're not sure that what's supposed to be going on is going on in the, you know, if that's a Genet or special ed Google Classroom site. But let's assume it's one instead of two. It is, if you feel that these are important services for your child to make the progress that they need to be making, then we go through the things that Joanne was talking about. Our first suggestion is to go directly to the team leader for your IEP team, or to go to the teacher and to make that request. Sounds like you've already done that. So then from there within the district, you can go to Christine, you know, you can go to the superintendent ultimately, and you also have the options that we have when schools are open. If you're not able to work something out with the school district, then keep documenting what the impact is on your child. The complaint can be filed with the state, or you can have mediation with the state. So those kinds of advocacy options are available as well. We have, I can't say we've had success in all instances, but we've had many instances where things have been worked out with that kind of advocacy within the district, but it's also the same kind of advocacy tools are available from the state as well. And I think we have that information in our slides, or if not, we can send it to folks later. Michelle or Christine, you have anything to add?
How to move my mouse. I think that again, you know, we're not, for the remote learning, it's not, you know, exactly what it says in the IEP. And I think part of it that I would want to know is, in many instances, we're trying to co-teach and collaborate with general education. The students are in general education or co-teach, and then provide services separately. So sometimes you're getting services in both areas. And so it'd be important to know on an individual basis what the struggle is, what we've advocated for, what's happening. We cannot provide the services, one-to-one as to what it shows in the IEP during this remote learning time. So, but if there is a problem, you should always feel free to contact me. I can tell you that the special educators are working so hard. I'm sure Michelle can, we've gone from whatever our standard day is to double that time as well. You're trying to plan, you're trying to work. We feel it every day. We go into this job for a reason because we love our kids and we want to support our kids and our families. And so I really believe that everyone's doing everything they can to support and advocate for children. So if you're concerned or if you need help, please reach out to us. I can only tell you we've been holding IEP meetings for the last 2 weeks, and they've been wonderful meetings, and parents have been very happy and had great relationships with people. So I think that ability to collaborate and work with your team is key. And so that's what I would strongly suggest if you're not sure, because sometimes there are things happening that you don't know, or that you're not on the screen watching who's there and what's happening. So that's what I would suggest. I don't know if you're,
and I'll ditto what was said about reaching out to your special educator if there's an issue. I received an email last week where one of my students was struggling to access remote learning. She was just having a rough day. So I was able to email the parent and set up like a time that day to just chat with the child. And it was great. And I wouldn't know that, or that they were having a rough day, if the parent hadn't emailed me. So it's really good to reach out to your special educator directly and see if you can get additional services, or maybe even just make a different connection.
Thank you all. Next question, should you receive a remote learning plan if your child has a 504?
It's a really good question. If your child has a 504 plan, they still have a right to free and appropriate public education. They still have a right to get the services and the accommodations they need so that they can access what's being offered by the school district. I would think, and other people can think of what else has been in the state guidance, it's similar to what exists when schools are open. The IEP is one way that school district can show that they're complying with 504, but they can be doing it differently. So I'm not sure they have to provide a remote learning plan, but they do have to provide the specialized instruction and the accommodations, and they need to make what's being offered accessible for your child. So the same components probably need to be offered, even if it's not exactly in the remote learning plan. But we'd have to do a little research to see, unless Christine or Michelle,
I agree with that. And 504s, but we have this conversation all the time. I think that staff have been, notifying people of what they're doing, schedules, accommodations. I can say for special education, we are formalizing it, rather than staff doing it individually. I'm developing a formalized process so that families will be getting it this week. But there has been no guidance from DESE in particular about needing because I asked the question about needing a specific remote learning plan, although if you want to advocate for it, as long as it's not charged 504s, but I think it would be great because I think it makes people be accountable. I keep going back saying, are you providing your accommodations? Are you providing the services? If a student got lunch bunch or some type of social emotional, that needs to continue even on a 504 to support students around those areas. So I think anything that formalizes it in some way would make it more effective.
And there are some kids, and certainly some of the families that we've been working with and advocating for, who need additional accommodations or modifications in order to access learning. Because of their special needs, they're facing more barriers accessing learning than they do when they're currently in school. And again, the federal law, the state law makes it really clear if kids need more accommodations and modifications in order to access this kind of learning, then that's something that the schools are, as you've heard from Michelle and Christine, not just legally obligated to do, but you have professionals who are very much striving to partner with you to figure out how to do it.
Thank you.
I just want to add that I've also advocated that 504 team meetings should be happening. So if you have a student on a 504, or you're supposed to be having a 504 team meeting to go over the IEP, or you want to make it, I mean, the 504, you want to make any, you're worried about the transition to another grade level or another school, or, you know, going to high school or something like that, that you should advocate to have a team meeting for a 504 in preparation.
Yeah. So we're at 9 o'clock. I'm going to sneak in one more question. Should parents address issues with remote learning in response to a proposed IEP?
Yes.
Yes, but it's a little bit complicated because the remote learning plan is based on the current IEP. You do not have to amend the IEP. So they're two different animals, which is what really confusing, right? So if there's a proposed IEP that you haven't accepted yet, then the remote learning plan should address the services and the goals and objectives in the IEP that you have accepted. And once there's a new IEP, the IEP doesn't lay out, the IEP lays out the services and instruction that your child needs when schools are open. And then the remote learning plan figures out the way to provide those while schools are closed. In an IEP meeting, you can definitely talk about it, but it gets very confusing what goes into the IEP and what goes into the remote learning plan. I don't know if that makes sense. It's a really good question.
No, I agree. It's a really good question, and it is really hard to say, to answer, because this is so new and we've never had remote learning, and some kids are, you know, just not accessing no matter how hard. So I think it's really important to have a plan in place in September, and I would encourage all of you to advocate for your child in September and meet with the team, because I think special educators are going to have to respond and come up with new ways of reaching our learners in September. Should we stay remote or should we not stay remote?
Right, or what many people are also expecting is when schools open, it may be some combination of remote, the same thing they're talking about this summer, maybe some combination of remote and in person. But the state has been very clear repeatedly that the IEP should reflect everything that your child needs when schools are open. You know, you don't modify to reflect the adapted, or in some cases, lesser amounts of services, and that the remote learning plan addresses how to access those while schools are closed. So it's, we're just concerned that some families may end up having IEPs that don't reflect all the child's needs if they're amended to reflect what's provided when things are more difficult that schools are closed. So it's a really good and important question to try and clarify.
Okay, thank you. We've just launched a poll. We had a couple poll questions we wanted to get out before everyone leaves, and I'm just going to ask one more question. If a child is not receiving services in accordance with the IEP, are they eligible for compensatory services?
I think it was Leslie who went over compensatory services. It's going to be an individual kid-by-kid determination that will be made as schools open up. You know, what level or type of compensatory services your child might be eligible for. So we can't say that every single child is automatically going to be eligible for compensatory services, but it's definitely anticipated that many kids will need some type of compensatory services, and the state has said that they're going to be giving guidance to school districts to how to go about making those determinations. And of course, there's a lot of concern about how school districts are going to be able to pay for services, because there's going to be a lot of kids who may need compensatory services, and there's some kids who we know, maybe some of you with your kids at home, who are not only having difficulty accessing the instruction to make progress, but they're regressing. And so there's going to be some kids who are going to need more intensive services going forward in the future to address, you know, I think this is what Michelle was talking about, what their needs are going to be as schools open. IEPs themselves may need to be revised for going forward. So the state will definitely be giving more guidance. And the goal is to work as cooperatively as possible with the administrators and the team to make these determinations. And it's going to be a lot of work. Christine, I'm sure, and Michelle, for the number of kids are going to be coming in where these determinations are going to need to be made as swiftly as possible.
I just want, I mean, as swiftly as possible, 100%. I just always worry, you know, we go back in September. We want to see where the kids are. We want to be able to engage with the kids. We want to, you know, we want to, you know, be able to re-engage with the kids and support, not like go smack into team meetings about things, right? I think it's just super important to re-engage, assess, do some stuff to see where kids are, and meet collectively as team as much as possible. You know, so I know we have to balance the fear and how do we get reacclimated? How do we get re-engaged? How do we bring the kids in? How do we put some of these things in place? And then figure out, you know, where to go from there. So I just think it's a balancing act. I think that's the biggest fear that I'm trying to work with staff. Like, if we go back day one and everyone's like, I want a team meeting, I want all these, you know, we haven't even been able to spend the time with the students to see what's happening. So we'll do our best, as we always do, to support students and families. I just think it's a balancing act that we want to make sure that we're able to do. And I would say, Michelle, probably for you too. We just want to know, we want to see the kids, we want to bring them in, we want to spend some time with them, we want to see what skills they have, what they don't, so that when we meet as a team, we all have the same information. Right now, we only have what we see on the screen when we're able to access.
Okay, I'm gonna step in here, and I don't know, I want to thank everybody for coming, but first, Leslie Hughes, can you activate the poll? Because we tried to do it and we can't. So we're gonna try one more time to do that before anybody leaves. Since Leslie is the host, maybe you have to do it.
And as we're doing that,
What do you want me to do?
Can you activate the poll? I'm sorry, Julia. So you go down to the bottom and it says polls and see if it will let you activate it.
Okay.
And if it shows up, folks, if you can do it before you leave.
No, all I can do is relaunch it.
Yeah, try that.
Okay. Relaunching the poll will clear existing polling results. You
Yeah.
want to continue?
Yeah.
Do
So
people
you know?
see the poll? Okay, so if people can fill that out, that'd be great. I'm thinking, I'm not seeing it because I'm on Mac's thing, maybe? Who knows? All right, Julia, go ahead. What did you have to add? Sorry.
No, I was going to say, if we're wrapping up, I was just going to also thank everybody and Christine for joining, and all the families who are here, and also say that, you know, we've been working, as Joanne mentioned, in Somerville for many years, and the PAC has been a really important support and resource for parents over this time. You've had tremendous leaders in the past. Some of the past officers are on this call. You've got a great group of officers that I think you can have already see from listening to Michelle and Lucy and the others. And the PAC is going to be a great resource every step of the way as you navigate this unbelievable pandemic and everything that's happened to your kids because of it. So you're really fortunate to have such great officers here in Somerville.
And also, before you go, there's a survey. It's the very first comment in the chat, and plus I put it towards the end, and it's a link to the PAC survey. So the PAC has asked us to help them do this survey, and we'll also give it to them so that they can put it on their Facebook page so that they can get some more people to fill it out that way as well. So if you want to copy that link and go in and do it, and plus it will be on their Facebook page.
Thank you so much, Mass Advocates and everyone for coming. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Yes, and thanks to Christine for being here too.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night.
Have a great night. Bye.
Good night.
Bye.